Friendships, lies, drama, betrayal, rivalry, justice, war, love, fear, and chaos. Only the best shows written by the best writers are able to pull off such a wide range of themes and plot points. Shows that only come round once in a blue moon. Shows like Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad. But recently there has been a new contender to the conversation of the greatest show ever. I've already watched episode 1 multiple times and I'm eager to share this with you. This is the Handforth Parish Council Planning and Environment Committee, Thursday 10th of December 2020. Now let's take a look at some highlights from episode 1.
When do we plan to start?
I think we could start any moment, Chairman. I think it's perhaps helpful just to go through the same things as we went through before, which is just to encourage people to switch off their microphones, because it does reduce the background.
On that.
Bing, which tells us that somebody else wants to come in. So I'll continue to admit people if you'd like to start the meeting, Chairman.
Can we be assured that we won't be thrown out of the meeting like we were last time?
As long as we have reasonable behaviour from everyone, no one would be excluded from the meeting.
I was thrown out of the meeting. So was Councillor Birthill, so was Councillor Brewerton.
As you can see, the show jumps right into the action. No hesitation, we're immediately introduced to some of the main characters. We're not given too much context at this point, and I like that. You can tell that these characters have a past, they have history together, whether that's good or bad, but as the audience, we have to kind of formulate our own opinions and conclusions based on what we're seeing in this current moment. Now, I really like the opening scene to this. We see a medium shot of the back of Roger Small's head. Obviously, he's facing away from the camera, and the camera's angle is slightly looking up, so Roger himself appears physically insignificant. Obviously, his name being Roger Small, and him looking physically small, it's a little Easter egg, so hats off to the writers for that one. That's very clever. And then what happens next is fairly magical. He quickly turns, and just before we see, all the details in his face, the camera cuts. Now this reminds me of a certain scene from Game of Thrones, actually, where we see, quick flashes, quick glimpses of the Night King, but he's never on screen long enough to actually identify some of the physical features of his face. And I think the Handforth Parish writers are going for a similar kind of vibe here. I'm guessing that Roger Small is going to turn out to be a villain, perhaps, or there'll eventually be a kind of main plot line based around him, just based on my experience with other kind of TV shows and the similar way that they've kind of introduced this character. Jackie Weaver as well is already kind of assuming a fairly dominant role in this first episode, and I'm guessing you won't be too shocked to find out that she does indeed have quite a huge part to play in the drama around episode 1. And finally, we have another main character, Handforth PC Clerk. Again, a very dominant character in the opening scene, and he does provide us with a little bit of context, which is a nice way to kind of build a bit of history between the characters without kind of outright telling us, everything that's happened previously to this. He addresses the fact that in a previous meeting he was kicked out. Perhaps prematurely kicked out of the meeting, and he's asking for reassurance that this won't happen again. A fairly reasonable request, but it does demonstrate that these characters have a past, they have history together. Specifically Jackie Weaver and Handforth PC Clerk, who from now on I'm going to call HPC, because his name's a little bit of a mouthful. We can assume that whilst they're not enemies, they're perhaps not the best of friends either. However, what's in the past is in the past. We're currently looking at this small snippet of the current time, and we're left to kind of form our own judgments on that, which, it's another really interesting concept about the show. Oh yeah, and I can't just ignore the comment from Peter Moore when HPC said he'd been kicked from a meeting before, and Peter Moore just says, quite rightly, in a very posh tone. Clearly another character who has had an unpleasant encounter with HPC. But again, it's building up the lore of the show. We kind of getting to know who's friendly, who are enemies, and it's creating a nice dynamic. And it will be interesting to see how that shifts over time, and whether kind of characters moving forward will make up with each other, or if they'll form allies and friendships with perhaps unexpected people. So let's get back into the story and see how these main characters progress.
As a point of order, Chairman, could we start them?
Again.
Chair.
Okay. I'll get for. Okay.
Chair.
We haven't started the meeting yet. Do you want to speak anyway?
Yes, I'd like to ask a point of order. I'm in.
We're not in a meeting, so points of order are not
When's it started yet?
applicable.
No?
Points of order apply during the debates.
Very quickly, we've just been introduced to a new character, John Smith. Now, I don't say this often, but the casting for this role is impeccable. I don't think I've ever seen a more John Smith-looking person than this man right here. The glasses, just everything is exactly the way I imagined when I heard the name John Smith.
And I want to ask Jackie, was it you who quoted a point of order?
Yes, it was indeed.
Are you here as the proper officer?
I am here offering support to Handforth Parish Council in the conduct of this meeting this evening.
You're not the proper officer.
Is that as clerk or proper officer?
There's no difference between clerk and proper officer.
Of course there is.
Yes, there is.
You must know the basic law,
Are we
I
going
would
to,
have thought.
are we going to start this meeting, Chair?
It isn't the role of somebody who, however kindly volunteers to do the clerking for a meeting, to act as a proper officer if they haven't so been appointed. That's against the law.
It's been called by
And let me also quote to you the standing orders of Handforth. Will you stop talking?
Unless we are prepared,
Will you please listen?
we'll go the same.
Will you please listen? Will you stop being whatever it is you're trying to be and just clerk the meeting if that's what you want to do?
Chairman,
Points of order, according to our standing orders, are determined by the chair.
Whoa, it's just starting to kick off now. As I said, I've already watched this a few times, so believe me when I say you're in for a treat. Now, it seemed from that initial opening scene that it was actually HPC who was the rebel, the troublemaker, the rule breaker, talking about how he'd previously been kicked out of a meeting. But now we're seeing him in a slightly different light. Now we're seeing him as a law enforcer. His character arc has already done a complete 180, and we're only 2 minutes in. He's reciting quotes, rules, regulations. The man clearly knows his standing orders. So it begs the question, what did happen in that first meeting?
If you want to raise a point of order as a councillor, you ask if you can raise a point of order, you state it, and then the chair decides. It is not for the clerk to raise a point of order. It is not for the clerk to decide a point of order.
councillors.
And you must be aware of that, or at least God knows what you're doing in your job if you're not aware.
Start this meeting,
It is.
or shall we elect an alternative chairman?
Oh, hiya. I'm just in a meeting at the moment. Can I give you a call back when it finishes?
The good reason.
Okay, all right, bye.
So, Chairman, albeit late, shall we get this meeting started?
As long as you
Can't see Jackie Weaver.
Who's this woman? There.
Right, we'll start the meeting, and I want to repeat what I said at the beginning of the last meeting, that this meeting has not been called according to the law. The law has been broken.
It has been properly
Will you
called.
please let the chairman
Mrs. Weaver, please.
To disrupt this meeting, I will have to remove you from it.
You can't.
It's only the chairman who can remove people from a meeting. You have no authority here, Jackie Weaver. No authority at all.
She's just kicked him out.
I-
Just wait. No, she's kicked him out. Don't. She's kicked him out. Don't.
This is a meeting called by two councillors.
Illegally?
You may now elect a chairman.
No, they can't because the vice chair's here. I take charge. Read the standing orders. Read them and understand them.
Dear me.
Appalling behaviour.
Chairman gone.
A copy of this will, in fact, be sent to the monitoring officer.
I hope
The
so.
vice chair.
Holy shit. As I said, I've watched this, hundreds of times now, and it still shocks me every time. Our main character, the Standing Order Wizard, also known as HPC, has been brutally murdered in front of the whole of the Handforth Parish Council. This shocks me more than when Ned Stark was killed off in episode 9 of Game of Thrones. HPC was an opinionated man with a slightly unclear background. We're not too sure on his past, but from what we've seen from him so far, we can tell that he has a lot of enemies, but he also has a lot of friends, a lot of allies perhaps. We're introduced to another character quite quickly following HPC's death, Aled's iPad, which is another kind of unique name that I think has been kind of created specially for the show. So Aled's iPad obviously couldn't believe this either. He was just as shocked as the viewers, I'd say. He started shouting and screaming about standing orders. Perhaps he thought that this would kind of resurrect HPC, and HPC's love for the law and rules and regulations would kind of bring him back to life. But sadly, this is not the case. And as far as I'm aware, HPC is gone for good. So amidst the chaos, we've also been presented with a side plot, a little kind of side story featuring Julie's iPad. Just the spelling of the word iPad gives us loads of information of this character. Although we haven't got an actual visual reference yet, we can tell that this is a really chaotic character who has been written in to perhaps cause a little bit of contrast, add a bit of humour, and take away from the severity of the main plot. It's a light-hearted kind of character. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the side plot develops, and perhaps in the future episodes how the side plot and the main plot kind of come to merge into one. I think my favourite part of this episode has got to be the introduction of one of the characters, Barry Burkhill. Now, if we take a closer look at the scene, you might find it slightly familiar. And rest assured, this is definitely the first time that Barry Burkhill has appeared on your screen. Some of the astute viewers will have noticed that Barry's entrance to the show directly mimics that of Roger Small, who we saw earlier in the opening scene, facing away from the camera, low angle, appearing physically small. But unlike Roger, Barry is surrounded by a heavenly glow. The light from the ceiling is casting a magnificent ray. It looks kind of golden and peaceful and quite frankly heavenly. Now I think this is a little bit of foreshadowing, a bit of pathetic fallacy, where the weather, the lighting, the mood kind of reflects the direction of the show. And I think that we're going to see Barry come into fruition as a kind of main hero character. But that's just a theory, and we'll have to wait and see. Now, we have to quickly move back onto Aled's iPad. I didn't really fully analyse this character. He's a very interesting character because it's not just one character, it's two characters. Now, going back to the Game of Thrones analogy, these characters in particular remind me of Joffrey Baratheon and Cersei Lannister. I don't know if anyone else can see the resemblance there. So Joffrey here on the left completely loses it. He starts screaming and shouting. I think at one point he even shouts like, "I'm in charge," which is such a Joffrey thing to do. However, this is juxtaposed nicely with the character on the right, the older gentleman who at the moment is seemingly trying to keep the peace, but we do see later on that perhaps all is not as it seems.
Out of those people,
Where's the chairman?
we elect
The standing orders, it then reverts to me.
Where's the chairman gone?
Read the standing orders.
like to elect a chairman for this meeting.
You don't have to elect a chairman. There's a chairman already installed. The chairman of the council.
Councillor Burkle, we've been through this.
You don't, what are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. The chairman of the council is the chairman of the
Council.
Yeah, I'm going to subpoena everybody.
Mr. Burkhill, could I ask you to be respectful to Jackie Weaver, please?
Elect a chairman.
Now, I've said it once and I'll say it again. Barry Burkhill is by far my favourite character of the whole show so far. He's the unsung saviour of the meeting, temporarily restoring order and holding Jackie Weaver accountable for her actions. At this moment in time, all the characters seem to be confused, but as the audience, we get a clear overview of the entire situation, which creates a great sense of dramatic irony as we watch the mayhem unfold. Now that's all I'm going to show you today. I highly recommend you go and watch the full video, and I've linked it down below in the description. It's a really unique and well executed show. Episode 1 was absolutely amazing. Some may say perfect. Everything from the names, the hopeless use of technology, the lack of self-awareness really. The writers and producers have done a great job here, and I'm really excited for episode 2. So if you don't want to miss that either, make sure you like and subscribe. And thanks. I'll see you next time.